Thank you. I hope you all had a great day today. My name is Jutta Steiner, and I'm the CEO of Parity Technologies. Great to be here with you, although it's online and unfortunately not in person. So let's get started. Like many of you, every day I interact with a bunch of technologies, unfortunately controlled by a handful of large companies, and their interests are not necessarily aligned with ours. And we all feel the ramifications of this in our daily lives. Shutting down accounts, pushing people to self-censorship. I think the COVID crisis has magnified that. In addition, the mass protests, people really realize that all of this is a massive burden on society and individuals. But as you've seen, I guess today, throughout the day, simultaneously, there's been a lot of progress in open source. Decentralized blockchain tech has shown that we can build some different infrastructure that hopefully will make it much harder to corrupt these systems. And while Bitcoin showed the potential of this still nascent technology, I think it's important to see that blockchain isn't fully ready yet to break all the corporate strongholds on the web that we've seen so far. And despite all the promise and progress is made, there's still a lot to be done. And I want to tell you what we're doing on that side. So I personally initially trained as a mathematician, and while I've always been really excited about solving deep technical problems, I've always really cared about using my skills to work on relevant and meaningful issues. So when I look back, for me, the Snowden revelations of 2013 have been an unmistakable wake-up call. Very much around that time was also when I came across blockchain and started to understand the potential. So later on, about 5 years ago, I started a company called Parity Technologies together with Gavin Wood. We previously met through our work together for the Ethereum Foundation, where he was the chief technology officer and where we launched Ethereum while I was responsible as the chief of security. When we came out of the launch, we started Parity Technologies really with the aim to further develop out these protocols and software to provide builders and the pioneers of this better web, this Web3, with the tools they need. Super easily customizable software frameworks to implement state-of-the-art tech and provide a testbed for innovation. That's been all along the way our key motivation for the work that we're doing. So, Web3, a better future internet for us all. It's 5 years now that Ethereum launched, and looking back at what we've built, we were really excited from the get-go about the potential. Though admittedly, maybe a bit overly excited, it was really just a prototype in the early days, but it was robust. It sparked people's imaginations, caught them, in particular the vision that Gav back then set out around Web3 and of what alternative future could exist. Since then, Web3's vision has been our guiding star at Parity. We've built dozens of core technologies, blockchain implementations, proof of concept, various new concepts, the proof of authority networks that we've launched for the World Food Program, Building Blocks project that some of you might have heard of. We developed a new Rust-based Bitcoin implementation, subsequently used that for Zcash to increase the redundancy of the network. And we've really always been pioneering the development of layer 1. So recognizing the shortcomings of the Ethereum 2015 release, and as many of you know, 2.0 was proposed, but progress has been slow. And so a few years ago, we introduced our early conception of a new protocol that we call Polkadot. And here we are, 3-4 years later, in the middle of Polkadot's launch, actually 2 weeks ago is when that started. So with all of what we've built, we've always taken a very much engineering and developer builder focused approach, intensely focusing on identifying and developing the super critical components and improvements in the realm of general purpose blockchain protocols. So by which I mean, we've always tried to identify those components that we can deliver in a reasonable timescale to enable builders with meaningful new ways of building what they want to build. It's what we call blockchain unbounded. So what is Polkadot? Polkadot is a next generation blockchain protocol. It unites an entire network of purpose-built blockchains, allowing them to seamlessly operate together at scale. And by bringing together the best features from multiple specialized blockchains, Polkadot paves the way for Web3 to emerge. Polkadot's design offers several distinct advantages over existing and legacy networks, including heterogeneous sharding, secure cross-chain transactions at scale, seamless upgrading, alongside transparent and reliable on-chain governance. And once those building blocks are all in place, I think that will be another level of innovation that can really flourish, because we've improved on so many levels what the technology could deliver just a few years ago. So, blockchains that grow, future-proofing what we've built, I think is an important point. Because we all know software gets outdated, and like any other software, blockchains need upgrades to stay relevant. But it's far more challenging to upgrade a blockchain than a random app, game, browser, whatever. So upgrading conventional blockchains so far has always required forking the network. It often takes months of work and preparation, and even worse, can lead to highly contentious hard forks that break up communities. It's, say, as if you replace your dead dog with another dog of the same breed, and you start calling it the same name for the sake of the kids. But except in this case, the original dog isn't dead, and also, I guess, the new dog has all the memories of the original dog surgically implanted into its brain somehow. You get what I'm saying? I mean, it's a metaphor, so don't look too hard. It's going to break. But this really has been the paradigm for as long as there have been blockchains. Upgrading is hard. You can't call up every Bitcoin miner, Ethereum miner, tell them that they have to upgrade. It's just not going to work. And so Polkadot really fundamentally changes this process. It enables blockchains to upgrade themselves without the need to fork the chain. These forkless upgrades are enacted through Polkadot's transparent on-chain governance system. And at the very core, they are made possible by the concept of an upgradable blockchain runtime that Polkadot introduces. So what's a runtime? A runtime essentially is the logic of a blockchain. It defines what is valid, how the next block, how the next state can be generated. How do we get from the previous state to the next state? And by the blockchain logic, I really mean the code that defines what the blockchain does. So Zcash, for example, does zero-knowledge proofs of transactions. Bitcoin does extremely basic accounting. So the model of what a blockchain does is called a runtime. And with Polkadot, we've abstracted all of this, the building of a runtime, to let you and the users actually do what you need to do and want to do. And so with these features, Polkadot enables products to stay super agile, adapting, evolving with the pace of technology, assimilating whatever becomes available, and integrating that into the runtime. It also has massive security benefits, but that's a very big topic that I won't touch tonight. So what's next? Open and on-chain governance. The upgrading also significantly reduces the risk associated with contentious hard forks, which is a severe barrier to entry for many organizations that want to explore blockchain technology. So we imagine all sorts of new concepts that people will implement and for which they will need these smooth upgrades. But at the same time, we're also deeply concerned about the state of the world. And while blockchains clearly won't solve all of our problems, we believe that there's an underlying concept that drives people to hopelessness. It's lack of agency in the decision-making process that govern them. So in the social sciences, agency is defined as the capacity of individuals to act independently and to make their own free choices. So, and in governance, it is the idea that you say, well, your vote, your position is heard and incorporated into those processes, enough that you do not feel disenfranchised and forgotten. And so legacy blockchains really don't cut this. They do not give their users agencies in the decision-making, but Polkadot does. So in contrast to the early chains, where no formal governance procedures existed, individual stakeholders had to try to maneuver informal processes to hopefully get their changes into a protocol. But with Polkadot, it's different. It's governed by anyone who owns dots, super transparently, the native currency in a fair and transparent way. So what else? Polkadot is many chains and one network. And any blockchain, any application you build makes different trade-offs to support specific features, fast transactions, private transactions, whatever you need. And use cases and chain specialization increases over time, and that makes the need to transact between them even more important. So with that in mind, Polkadot is a sharded blockchain, meaning it connects several chains into a single network. All the chains can make their own trade-offs, and allowing them to process transactions in parallel and exchange data between the chains with strong security guarantees. So thanks to that unique heterogeneous sharding model, so the fact that each of these chains can pick their own runtime model, their own decision, how they want to implement what they need to do, each chain in the network is optimized for a specific use case rather than being forced to adapt to a one-size-fits-all model. So more chains and more specialization means more possibilities for innovation. And by bridging multiple specialized chains together into one sharded network, Polkadot allows for multiple transactions to be processed in parallel, which increases the scalability of the chain. And in the future, as we move on from a single, what's called the relay chain, to nested relay chains, a full hierarchy, this scaling will increase even further. So where are we with all of this? So before I go into what's next on the launch, let me briefly touch on the Kusama network. So Kusama is an early and unaudited release of Polkadot that we launched in the late summer of 2019. It served as proving ground, allowing teams, developers to build out and deploy early versions of their technology, try out the governance system, staking, nomination, what have you, validation, functionality in a real environment. But in contrast to what previously has been known as like test networks in the context of blockchain, Polkadot is a canary in net. So canary in the coal mine, some of you might know. So it's an early, highly experimental version of Polkadot, but presenting real economic conditions. So there's no kill switch, there's no faucet. It's all a fully decentralized, real blockchain network. And we've used it ourselves to prove some of the assumptions we've made within the Polkadot economics. Other teams have started to use it with the same purpose for their projects. And going forward, Kusama and Polkadot will remain very much independent, standalone networks built on very similar code bases still. But Kusama will continue to have faster governance, parameters, and lower barriers to entry to allow us to test out things in this real environment on a really fast scale, to then also quickly, once it's tested, move it onto Polkadot, and so keep up the speed of innovation and momentum. So while Kusama is wild, loose, Polkadot's really conservative, prioritizing stability and dependability, slower, more methodical governance, upgrade processes, all of this. So if you want to get involved, Kusama is excellent for bold experimentation, early stage deployment, while Polkadot, once it's fully launched, will be designed for the reliable execution of risk-averse, high-value applications. That's where you want to live. So the Polkadot launch process. Getting back to it, discussing a bit about where we are. You may have heard that we are in the middle of the launch. Effectively, I think it's exactly 2 weeks ago that we released, or Web3 Foundation released the Genesis block. So the launch process is in fact like a multi-step process in which the network will be decentralized, governance will be enabled, further functionality will be adopted, and further features. And I thought it would be helpful to walk this through. So POA, the moving to proof of stake, how all of this will happen over time. And we've gone through that process already once. That was another reason to have Kusama, so to be able to launch this, because it's really highly advanced technology, and you need to ensure that the network's ready as you move along and increase the functionality. So the first chain running now, actually it's called a chain candidate, so very similar to release processes in open source. We call it a chain candidate, a release candidate that, if all goes well, which we hope and we're confident, will then move on into the eventual network. So the first chain initially has a very restricted runtime. It's limited to basic operations just to gain confidence that networking is stable, all of this. And these limitations will be lifted through a series of governance decisions and upgrades of the runtime. So during the first phase, Polkadot will operate as a proof of authority chain that is maintained by the validators of the Web3 Foundation. And then the chain limitations will only allow users to claim the dots. So those who participated in a dot sale, purchase dots, are able to then signal also their intention to validate and nominate, which is important to then move on to the next stage. So once Web3 Foundation is confident that the stability is there, that there's a sufficient number of validators who've put down their intention, Web3 Foundation will use a pseudo key, so super user rights to access the governance functions to initiate the first validator election and then move to proof of stake. It's quite an exciting thing to observe if you're interested. So this election will transition the network from proof of authority into its second phase, nominated proof of stake, so the eventual way for the system to achieve consensus, where the system is secured by the economic stakes bonded to the validators. So after the chain is running well with all the larger validator sets, the pseudo key will enable the suite of governance modules in Polkadot, namely modules to enable council, technical committee, public referenda, all of this. And if you want to learn more, there's plenty of resources where you can read about the on-chain governance of Polkadot. So once council governance tools are in place, the public, and that's crucial, has the avenues to effect any change in the system at once. And then a further runtime upgrade initiated by the public referenda will remove pseudo from Polkadot, leaving it fully in the hands of the token holders. So, and without pseudo, the chain will no longer be a candidate. That's the essential eventual move. It will be the live decentralized network. And the final stages of Polkadot's rollout will then involve unlocking the remaining functionality. So one of the first post-pseudo upgrades will likely enable balance transfers in the network. And then after that, further governance proposals will unlock the rest of Polkadot's core functionality, like allowing the first parachains and cross-chain messages. So, if you're excited now, how can you get involved by building your own chain? So, in order to do that, one thing we've done is to build an entire suite of toolkit, which is called Parity Substrate, to make it really easy to build for Polkadot. It's highly advanced technology. It's a lot more complex, but also like tons more powerful than smart contracts. And therefore, we've built this framework for people to use. So, and building blockchains is hard, and this is essentially what you do with Substrate. You build your own blockchain. We've done it many times. You need high-level experts for peer-to-peer networking and all the rest of it. So we didn't want people having to go through all of this, and this is why we packaged what we've learned and what we need in our daily work into this framework Substrate. It's a modular framework, meaning you and your developer team can mix, match components to fit your use cases, choose consensus types, governance, other integrations, and rework this over time in the next few years. So if you want to get your hands dirty, there's a link here to a 30-minute Start Building Blockchains course. Our hope really with Substrate is to empower a new class of developers and innovation in the space. So when you consider the spectrum of development skills and what's possible, so on the one hand, with Ethereum, you had smart contracts. So yeah, bit of JavaScript-like Solidity coding to start this. And on the other hand, there's like building a new chain using Substrate. And this is like the entire spectrum in between, like between building a new chain, which requires like a full stack of like skills, is what Substrate will enable. Like you pick and customize whatever you need for the problem you're trying to solve. We're really hoping that Substrate, Polkadot together will like spark an entire new wave of innovation, because it's such a powerful toolkit to let people experiment and integrate further technologies as they come along. So here we are, Polkadot's live for the last 2 weeks. And we'll be continuing along our launch timeline over the coming weeks and months. As I set this out, we get through the core phases, we will start to see parachain projects. So that's the core thing that people will deploy coming on board, including a lot we've already been building and are excited to see launching. So there's been a lot of activity in the last few months since we started the project coming together. So maybe some of the highlights, Akala, who's building their own cross-chain stablecoin platform, Moonbeam to make it really easy for existing Ethereum applications to move onto Polkadot, Chainlink, Oracle technology for Polkadot users, killed self-sovereign credentials for Web3. Plasm, already a layer 2 dApp available to ensure very early scaling. Fala, privacy-preserving data protocols for Polkadot. Lamina, an open finance platform powering synthetic assets. And Davinia, who are developing a protocol for cross-chain bridges. So these are just a few. These are just a few highlights of what's already there. So we're really excited. We love building stuff for people who want to build stuff with the technologies we provide. And we'll be focused on building out that infrastructure security for Polkadot, Kusama going forward. So with that, if you want to learn more, follow Twitter, social media, Telegram, send us an email if you want to learn more, or visit Polkadot Network. Thank you.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.